Ladies and gentlemen, welcome after the lunch break for our last two sessions that will conclude the Warsaw Security Forum. I know it's very hard to come after a good lunch break with all the discussions we had over, but I thank you very much that you are here. We start with a session that has been co-organized with our good friend from the Czech Republic, the organization Jagello 2000, and Zbynek Pawlaczyk, I'll try to say the right pronunciation at the end, who has been so kind to help us to put together the sessions. Zbynek, thank you very much. And I yield the floor to our wonderful moderator, Alexandr Vondra, a former Minister of Defense of the Czech Republic, who will take the floor from here.
Well, I think I can invite all the panelists to take the seat with me. You have your name tags just on the left side of your chair. So, good afternoon, everybody. So I hope that you had an excellent lunch, as we all had. And my privilege is to welcome you at this special panel. I have to admit that the original idea was to bring the four Visegrad ministers of defense. That was the Jagello idea, but then the real life wants differently. There is a transition in Poland of the government. The Czech defense minister has assumed the role of the presidency of the Visegrad, so he decided to have the summit on his home country. So we had to change that. In fact, expand the scope of the panel to some broader picture and the selection of the country. And I think it's to the benefit of the team of the panel, which is, you know, the situation in a certain kind of a buffer zone. Europe in the last years is under the pressure from two sides. One pressure comes from the east, so that's the growing assertivity and even the aggressivity of the Vladimir Putin's Russia. On the other hand, we are just seeing also the growing pressure from the south, so the rise of the ISIS, which famously President Obama compared to some junior who are trying to take the jerseys of the Kobe Bryant and play like LA Lakers, and then were all taken by surprise once they have got it into Mosul, as well as the flow of the millions of the people. So those countries, each individually somehow target of those two trends. And because Kateřina wanted to have a more TV-like debate, so I asked, you know, just to cancel any introductory statement. We have almost less than 1 hour for the panel, so I would jump right into the middle of the debate, which I think is typical for the capitals in our country, which is the same question for each panelist. But before doing that, I have to also quickly introduce them. So the CVs are on the internet. So just would start with Daniel Ioniţă, who is the State Secretary from the Romanian Defense Foreign Ministry. Gerhard Jandl came from Vienna, so Austria, and the Security Policy Director from the Austrian MFA. Daniel Koštoval comes from Prague, so the long-time Deputy Minister of Defense, right now responsible for the acquisition, but before also responsible for the strategic planning and foreign affairs. Johan Lagerlöf came from Sweden, and he is the Deputy Director General for Security Policy and International Relations with the Swedish MOD. And last but not least, Janos Siklósi is coming from Budapest, so Deputy State Secretary for Defense Planning and Policy with the Hungarian MOD. So as I promised, the same question for each, for every panelist. What you, and you are the leading expert on defense and security in your country, so what you personally consider the greatest threat for Europe as well as for your country? It comes from the east or from the south, and what the population in your country perceived as the greatest threat. So, Daniel, maybe you are the first to take the floor.
Yes, thank you, Sage. Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everybody. It gives me greatest pleasure actually to be back again in Warsaw, and I'm very happy to see that so many of you have survived to the wonderful Polish hospitality. After the great lunch, we hope actually to have a very good discussion. Your question is very tough, and of course it deserves for me, as a diplomat, maybe a more laborious response. Because in the East, after the illegal annexation of Crimea, we've seen a game changer, and we've seen that the old assertiveness of Russia has transformed slowly but surely in a sort of very aggressive actions. And it goes without saying that the countries from the eastern flank do perceive Russia as not only as a challenge, but sometimes as a threat. In the south, besides what you have mentioned, besides Daesh, besides the rise of terrorism, besides the actions after the so-called Arab Spring, and in recent months, in recent period of time after Russian intervention in Syria, we've seen a lot of challenges coming from there, and the migration flow is only one issue, and this migration flow for the time being is maybe one of the most important as we speak in Europe. But in Europe, besides the threats from the south, besides the threats from the east, we are facing also with our domestic problems. For instance, Grexit and Brexit are not issues that are already solved. But when it comes actually to the actions, to the challenges from the south and from the east, we see that there is a common denominator in these actions, and that common denominator is having also a name, and that name is Russia. And for me, for Romanian diplomat, of course the danger maybe is more persistent from the east, because if you're looking on the map, you will soon realize that Crimea is situated only 300 kilometers far away from the Romanian border. Black Sea, to which we wanted badly to have it mentioned in different NATO documents, when we acted in doing so, some allies were a little bit reluctant, saying that where is the danger in the Black Sea? In the Black Sea, we do have cooperation. Russia is one of our partners. Everything was fine two years ago. And it happened that last year, all of a sudden, everybody realized that Crimea is not anymore belonging to Ukraine, that the Ukraine is under danger due to Donbass and Lugansk situation. And of course, all other countries are now obliged to see this situation. And in this context, I think has to be seen also the meeting in Bucharest of the heads of states and government of the eastern flank.
I will ask about this in the next question. So, Georg, I was in Vienna just a couple of weeks ago. The elections to the municipal, it was the horror to the last minute. So, what is the greatest stress for the Austrians?
Well, Alex, thank you very much. I would say on a strategic level, your question is not really easy to answer, Because on a strategic level, I would say kind of both challenges, both from the south and from the east, are of a vital importance. And it would be difficult for me to say which one is more important on a strategic level, seen, you know, from a government perspective, seen from a national perspective. I mean, when you ask the population on a practical level, maybe they would say that the challenges emanating from the south are more visible or do have more direct impact on the Austrian population. Because, you know, as everybody knows, we are at the end of the Balkans route. At the current time, we receive each and every day between 5,000 and 10,000 refugees. Most of them pass on to Germany, that's true, but like 10% of them stay in Austria. And so far, we have per capita and percentage-wise taken a little bit more than even Germany. This is certainly a great challenge for Austria and the population. And if you ask the population, and this was also to be seen during the election campaign, as the refugees are very visible and you see these people coming, certainly the population relates much more to this aspect of challenges rather than the one coming from the east. But from a state perspective, I mean, you know, we have been talking so much about Russia and how much Russia is you know, basically destroying the security order which we have had over the last 2.5 decades in Europe, with which we have been living very positively, and now everything goes into shambles. So from that point of view, I would say it's of a at least equal significance, but for the people living there, maybe the other challenge is more visible than the one coming from the east, which is not to say that we should underestimate the one from the east. If I may make one more point on Russia. I remember we had in the European Union a discussion a couple of years back before the Ukraine scenario started out, whether Russia was a partner or a competitor. And there were a few countries who wanted to see Russia as a partner and only as a partner, and others who rather wanted to see Russia as a competitor and only as a competitor. And I think this is our basic problem, because in my understanding, Russia is both. It's both a partner, although at the moment it doesn't behave as a partner, but in the long run, from a long-term perspective, we need Russia as a partner, but at the moment they are behaving like a competitor. And maybe this is our failure in at least some parts of Europe to really understand the true nature of Russian thinking, namely that they act always both as a partner. For that time being they don't, but generally speaking, normally they would do, and hopefully they would come back. But at the same time, they act as a competitor. And this kind of double identity of Russia in dealing with Europe is something which I have the feeling we don't understand well enough in Europe, and we have to come to terms. Obviously, you know, hopefully and necessarily after Russia has come back to join the family and the ways of how you deal with things in the family. Thanks.
Daniel, just another Daniel in the panel has mentioned the Bucharest summit, and the Czech president was the only one who was missing, and I think he made a mistake. I told this in Prague just 2 days ago. But what does it mean from your perspective, from the perspective of the Prague? Who is the greatest threat?
Good afternoon. I mean, from Czech point of view, I think we don't see really a hierarchy regarding threats. We are convinced that we have to work for managing threats from the east and from the south at the same time and equally dynamically. It means, from our point of view, that we have to build army with the capabilities to send immediate response forces from the one end of the spectrum till having the heavy mechanized units as part of the follow-on forces to be able to really have sufficient firepower and go and really make the victory. So this is enshrined in newly adopted by the Czech government concept for the development of the army for the next 10 years. And this concept is already being funded by by the budget which is right now being approved in the parliament, and we have money for next 3 years in this law on the state budget. So we will be moving in this direction. It means from our point of view, we need bigger army, we need qualitatively better army, and we need an army which is able to cover the whole spectrum from light units, special operation units, to heavy mechanized units. Thank you.
I was hoping to get at least one clear answer, east or south. You are all diplomatic. So, Johan, in Stockholm, you have the both experiences with the Russian submarines monitoring you in the Baltic Sea. You have now the experience with the influx, because Sweden is one of the beloved countries for the immigrants. Where the current Swedish mainstream see the greatest stress, in the east or in the south?
Is it working? Yep. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to give a straight answer. I think the general opinion would be to the east. However, the big challenge we face in the south with migrants, ISIL, failing states, etc., etc. I do believe that what I myself and most Swedes would see as the more existential threat would be to the east. That is something that I believe that is seen as threatening core values of my country and other European Western countries, that the security order is challenged, and someone is trying to rearrange the security order and have maybe a Vienna Congress or something where big states will have a big say and the smaller states will have to adjust to the general orders, and that's nothing we would like to see in the future. And I also believe that the rhetorics involving nuclear weapons is extremely disturbing. When you inform your neighbor that you are possessing nuclear weapons and discussing the possible use of them, it's something that is something existential and something that adds another dimension to what we face to the east. Thank you.
And Péter, the view from the Budapest, what was in the spotlight of the events in the last couple of weeks, almost on the daily level? What is the view of the current Hungarian government as well as the Hungarian people?
I'm afraid I must disappoint you, Sasha, because I will not choose from the two. But let me offer two observations. The first one is, as someone already said, we have to tackle these two challenges at the same time. We don't have the luxury to pick one from them. We have to do it at the same time. And it's not only simply the sum of the two, because it's more than the sum of the two, because these two challenges are very different, and the tools you need to face these challenges are also very different, but you have to spend a lot of effort and money on creating these capabilities, both of them. Now, the second observation is potentially controversial, but I think that you expect something like that from a Hungarian, that I think from the two challenges, at least intellectually, I repeat, intellectually, the Eastern challenge is the simpler one. And the Southern challenge is the more difficult one. About the Eastern challenge, basically, we have been here. We have done that already during the Cold War. I don't say, so we know how it looks like, and we know what the answer is. Deterrence, defense, and so on. This does not mean that it's an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of work on unity. It takes a lot of money, investment in defense, and so on. But at least to the east, we know what to do. The situation is different with the south. First of all, that challenge is much more complex. At the moment, we see in the distance the fighting side of it. And we see the migration side of it in our own countries, and in some cases literally backyards. But there are many other aspects of this challenge. Demographic side, economic side, social side, and power realist side of this challenge. And at the moment, I'm afraid, the West does not even have a clue what to do with this whole complex of challenge. So in this sense, the Southern challenge is much more difficult to handle.
Thank you very much. So the common statement, let's say, is that we need to tackle the both challenges, that we cannot just simply select either or. That's what most of you has answered. So it brings me to my second question, and I would start with, you know, traditionally the United States had their military or strategic doctrine based on the conviction that they are ready to fight the two major wars at once. The last one is not as sound as the previous one in that particular respect. So, and it's pretty clear that with America tackling the issue from the south, it's in the clouds. With Russia, hopefully, NATO is getting ready for adopting the measures the next year here in during the Warsaw summit. So here is a composition, interesting composition of the countries which are somehow frontline states. They are all EU members. There are 3 NATO members and 2 non-NATO EU members. So to succeed in tackling the both challenges at once, it would also require cooperation among the nations in the region. Visegrad, the Baltic states, unfortunately we are missing a representative of the Baltic states here in the panel. But my second question is, what do you consider the best way how to tackle those urgent challenges with some kind of a regional cooperation? And maybe I will start with the Romanian friend, because you are neither part of Visegrad nor of the Baltic state, but you have organized this important meeting recently in Bucharest, trying, you know, to design the agenda of the eastern flank for the NATO summit. So one of the common wisdom is that countering the eastern challenge is the readiness to fight from the very first moment, that we simply would not have to fight any time, you know, to mobilize the traditional deterrent capacity of the Cold War. We need to act, otherwise we can lose, like Ukraine has lost the Crimea. So what in the terms of the hard security measures you would consider as a success to adopt next year in Warsaw during the NATO summit as one of the 2 leading countries in the eastern flank?
Yes, thank you so much actually for your question. Once again, a very difficult question, and it will deserve another conference actually to respond to you.
Oh, you have 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, the shortest answer is cooperation. Cooperation based on common strategies, on common understanding of the situation, and based on common solution. And for the next summit in Warsaw, we have actually to implement what we have decided in the Wales, but also we have to go beyond the wells, because some of the measures adopted in the wells are, I'm afraid to say, but a little bit outdated. And we need actually to adapt ourselves to the new realities and to take into consideration the new realities. And this is exactly what the recent meeting in Bucharest of the 9 presidents, 9 heads of states and government was doing. And actually the declaration adopted on that declaration, or on that occasion, with a very symbolic name, Allied Solidarity and Shared Responsibility, is starting actually from the common assessment of the security environment, and it ends up in proposing 9 measures which have to be taken into consideration. What is important? All those measures are meant to strengthen the solidarity, the unity, and the cohesion of the alliance. What we are doing in the East is going to complement what the alliance has to do in order actually to provide what alliance was meant to do. Actually,
which out of those 9 is the most important one?
All of them are equally important. I wouldn't put a sort of hierarchy on that. All of them are equally important. At the same time, we need to continue with what we have done. At the same time, we need to take into consideration the current threat, which is Russia, and we need to engage Russia, provided that Russia is fulfilling its international obligation. We need also to look beyond the whales in order to adapt, as I said, the alliance to face with the new realities. I wouldn't say that we need actually to, because, you know, in a very simple word, and I've heard that we need a permanent basis. Okay, maybe permanent is, this P word is sometimes resonating not so good in different capitals, but we need to do something. And first of all, we need to do something, each of us, in order actually to provide for our own defense, because the defense starts at home, but at the same time, we need also to do something together. And having an American at each and every frontier of our eastern flank, this might be an ideal solution, but I'm afraid we're living in a very real world, and in that real world, we need, as I said, more cooperation, more commitments, and we need actually to look forward in order to adapt this alliance to face and to cope with the current realities.
The question to Hungary now, Péter, your country is a member of the Visegrad group. There were, I would say, a quite intensive cooperation among the Visegrad countries in an attempt to tackle the challenge from the south until the moment when the vote in the European Council was coming and Visegrad was divided suddenly. So how do you see Visegrad possible contribution to tackling those challenges in future? Does Visegrad is located in Hungary, so it was established in Hungary. Does Visegrad has a future?
Yes, very much so. I do think that Visegrad has a future, and a great future. If we are speaking about the Eastern challenge, I do think that Visegrad itself does not have a direct role in that. But there is an indirect role for, not only for Visegrad, but for all the regional cooperations. There is no direct role because the role on the deterrence and defense side is NATO's role. And on the other side, like economic sanctions and things like that, that's the EU's role. And none of these roles can be done by regional cooperations. But regional cooperations can contribute to the visibility, to the viability, and to the strengths of these bigger institutions. Like when we developed our V4 EU battle group, that contributed to EU's CSDP, as we say. And the same military cooperation contributes to NATO's strengths and consequently NATO's ability to deter. And Hungary is in an interesting position because we are one of those few nations who are not only members in one regional cooperation, but we are a member in at least three well-working cooperations. Visegrad is one of them. The southern one, led by Italy, it's so-called DECI, Italy, Slovenia, Hungary, and to a certain degree Croatia and Austria. We work together in many issues. And then we have a Central European one of 6 nations plus Poland as an observer called Central European Defense Cooperation. And there is space for all of these cooperations. In terms of the southern challenge, yes, what you mentioned, that there was a broken up alliance of us during the EU discussions about the redistribution quotas. But, you know, that was only the first round. This will be a longer box match. There will be other rounds of that, and we will see what this will bring. And the second thing is we got a lot of help from our Visegrad partners, real material help when we lived the worst days of the migration challenge we had from the south. And these were concrete helps, dozens of soldiers from the Czech Republic first and then from Slovakia, and material help from Poland. So it was a very strong signal that Visegrad is alive and kicking.
I will still stay on the NATO soil and direct my next question to Prague, so the last NATO member here in the panel. Prague has assumed the role of the Visegrad presidency, and at the same time, under the new government, has also extended some arm of cooperation to Austria, I have noticed. So, Daniel, what is the concrete substance of this new policy thinking in Prague? How this can contribute to the greater security in the region?
I think, firstly, regarding the Visegrad, I mean, Czech presidency is, let's say, about action, about implementation, what was agreed 2 years ago in Visegrad. Actually, that's the vision for defense cooperation, and then year after that, the action plan. So we are focused on the implementation, and the core in the vision and the action plan is actually to put together a permanent rapid reaction unit, and we would like to base it on the experience when we are now putting together a EU battle group. So really being able to have kind of a permanent rapid reaction unit, I think would be big step ahead. And we are, I think, as V4 countries, open to any other country to join us in the more permanent cooperation. And I think Austria is, from Czech point of view, obvious natural target, let's put it this way, because that's the only neighbor which is not somehow anchored from Czech point of view in security and defense area, and still Austria is having big defense needs. Be it Air Force, be it needs for training for pilots and so on. So we, for example, came with the initiative putting together a multinational fixed-wing training program where Austria, for example, could participate in and solve its needs. But we would like to see, for example, Austria not really staying in the shell of neutrality, because, I mean, for us, the concept of neutrality in current world is something which is not working already. I mean, it's from another era. Reasons are gone, and having in EU valid common security and defense policy, nobody can be neutral. I mean, either you are in or you are out. So, I mean, even for Sweden, they have, I mean, those countries must act quickly to really make their decisions, because otherwise EU is not going to move. And from our point of view, as being also a NATO member, we will still be thinking that one part of our border is not somehow anchored into some security system. So I would like to see that Austria is more active and really making decisions, joining somehow maybe Visegrad countries or even wider grouping, but definitely joining those who are trying to be active in defense area, not just, let's say, waiting and solving just issues at home.
Thank you. So Austria and Sweden, they were some kind of a semi-neutral countries during the Cold War, but a lot has changed. So somebody has earlier today commemorated Swedish very active role during the Libyan campaign. So my next question goes to Austria. You know, what we can expect from Austria in future? Just try to imagine that European Union would decide to bomb ISIS in Raqqa. Can you imagine that the Austrians F-18 would join this effort one day?
Well, now I'm being under challenge from two questions, basically from Prague, yours and yours. But basically, let me answer. Is the microphone working, by the way? Yeah.
Closer.
Yeah. Let me answer in the following way. Thank you. Let me answer in the following way. Austria is a member of the European Union and as such actively participating in the common security and defense policy. For our participation in that, we have even amended the constitution. So from a constitutional point of view, neutrality does not apply to anything which falls under CSDP any longer. So whenever there is a CSDP action, be it a crisis management operation, in which, as you know, we are quite active, be it the preparation of a potential future European defense, or be it, you know, European Union action on another area, you mentioned a potential one, as long as it falls within CSDP, there's absolutely no legal problem as to the neutrality, because the neutrality does not apply for those instances. You said, Sasha, if the EU were to bomb ISIS, I guess this is a little far-fetched, but I guess Austria would not be the only country who would say, well, perhaps if the Security Council mandates or authorizes such an operation, then we could certainly consider participating. This is absolutely, I guess this is a more or less an open secret that many countries, although they would have the legal possibility to do that, would feel much more comfortable if there were a Security Council resolution to that effect, which is a political instance, but nevertheless. When it comes to NATO, as you know, Austria has been a, we guess, active partner to NATO, actively participating in crisis management activities, like we have the third largest contingent in Kosovo with KFOR. We have a contingent with RSM in Afghanistan. We had one with ISAF, although a smaller one, but nevertheless. We are actively participating in the cooperative security activities, lead a Tiger team on protection of civilians, etc., participating in trainings, etc., etc., and we do this as a partner to NATO. And you will understand that, you know, the development of partnerships is something which is important to us, and we understand also our participation in NATO's activities as a partner to NATO, as one of the cornerstones of our security policy, like our participation in CSDP affairs. And the new Austrian security strategy, which was adopted 2 years ago, says exactly that Austria is crafting and implementing its security policy predominantly within the framework of international organizations, namely as a member of the UN, of the EU, of the OSCE, and as a partner to NATO. And this basically flows from the idea, which you can find, I guess, in all the doctrinal documents of the recent years, that no individual actor is capable just by himself to tackle all the challenges, and that we need the international cooperation. And this is exactly what we do. I'm not going to answer the details of the questions on neutrality, because I think this is not a seminar on international or constitutional law, but the neutrality which is there, which is a fact because it's enshrined in the Constitution, does not really impede us from, I guess, actively participating in international and European security policy.
Johan, Sweden, you know, great defense spending, great army, great role in Libya operation. Carl Bildt and Radek Sikorski, hand in hand, shaping the agenda of the Eastern policy. So I see, you know, according to my opinion, Sweden is a de facto NATO member. Can we, and if you would apply to become the real member, I think everybody would be kissing you. So can we expect one day Sweden to finally sign it?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and I would say that it's impossible to foresee the future, but we do have a quite lively debate in the country about our relation to NATO, and we do not have a constitutional thing as Austria. It's a political decision for us, and with the current government, it's not in the program, and they have declared that it will not happen in the coming years, and it's a minority government with the Social Democrat and Green Party. Especially the Green Party has a long tradition of pacifism and so on, so it would be surprising if they would change their mind, I think. But having said that, we have a quite lively debate. The former governmental platform with 4 parties, more on the right-hand side of the political spectrum, they have now joined forces in all 4 of them together promoting a Swedish membership with some conditions on that it would be necessary to do it in hand with Finland, etc. So I'm sure that the discussion will continue. I can't see it happen in the coming years, but I have no crystal ball to tell you about any secret in this issue, but it will be an ongoing discussion.
Okay, I'm going to liberate you. So the last question relates to this. One, I would say the most important country from at least the strategic perspective from this belt of the buffer or frontal state, which is really missing, is Poland. We are here in the transition, but there is a lot of Polish in the audience. So my question, I would say to everybody, if you are willing to answer, but please a really short 1-2 sentence answer that we would have the time for the audience to raise the question to. What you would expect from Poland to play the role in the next couple of years? Who is willing to start the first? Daniel?
We do have, Romania and Poland do have a strategic partnership. And the very short answer to your question is, we do expect this partnership to be fully functional. We do expect actually to continue what we have started, and do expect actually to coordinate and to cooperate even better than we have done so far. We have a wonderful cooperation, but of course we need actually to continue with this great cooperation.
What do Vienna expect from the new Polish government?
Well, maybe. May I take yours? Maybe it's a little too early to speculate about the new Polish government, which is not formed yet, but basically what I can say at this juncture is that we appreciate the role Poland is playing. Poland is a very important country in the sort of Central Eastern European region, a region which is very close to us, and that's why we have a great admiration for what Poland is doing, and we expect nothing less than a continuation of what Poland has been very constructively doing so far. Thanks.
Daniel, the Prague perspective?
Visegrad defense cooperation is 3 years old. And at the beginning, I was personally trying to convince Robert Kupiecki from Ministry of Defense to go for it, and Poland did it. So we are now discussing even concrete projects, maybe joint acquisitions, and building multinational units, and increasing the role for Szczecin Corps headquarters and so on. I would like to see that Poland is even accelerating its quest for deepening regional cooperation. I would like to see that Poland is able to look beyond Visegrad and be also interested what's going on in the Balkans, and include possibly some Balkan countries like Croatia into different multinational projects. And I would like to see Poland, which is more extrovert in a way, which is not just saying what's the initiative or what's the aim, but actively building the momentum in the region through different events and activities and diplomatic channels and concrete cooperative projects. Because at least from Czech point of view, it was great. Last 3 years were great, but sometimes I was, from my point of view, knocking at the doors, and I was sometimes not really being able to get a picture. So I would like to see more extrovert Poland, which is really everyday present in our life of trying to push ahead with having a better defense in the region. Thank you.
Johan, I still have this picture ahead of myself, you know, those two liberals, Bildt and Siklósi, leading the agenda. So it was easy, but can we expect something similar from Socialist Wallström and the new conservative Polish foreign minister?
I would never speak on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so that remains to be seen with the new Polish minister. But I do want to stress that I was very short in my previous answer, so I'll be a bit longer now, because we have a new defense bill for the coming period 16 to 20, which one thing is to do our homework, increase our national warfighting capability. We have an increase in our defense budget with about 11% over 5 years. It's a new trend. We have to go back to the 1960s to see something similar. And so that's one part. We have to work hard home. The other part of the message from the bill is that we should increase our cooperation with our neighbors and in a regional perspective. So we work hard in the Nordic setting, making a lot of progress, mainly due maybe to external pressure that we have to help and take care of each other in difficult times. We are working in Nordic-Baltic environment. We are building closer bilateral ties. We have a special cooperation with Finland. We are also working together with the Danes for security in the southern part of the Baltic Sea. And we definitely see also scope and a role for Poland as being a major power in the Baltic Sea region. And this has been, we signed, our respective defense ministers signed MOU in late September, and we expect this to continue. We have had talks today with Poland, and we see a lot of common ground to have regional cooperations, could be in multilateral formats, but also bilaterally. So we have high expectations on the new Polish government to continue this and be a player also in Northern Europe. Thank you.
Peter, so Poland will have a conservative government. We do have a conservative government in Budapest. So does it open some doors for more intensive cooperation in the security arena between Warsaw and Budapest? So what do you expect from Poland to play?
Yeah, I think that's a good start to have two governments which have sympathy for each other. But our cooperation is not built on only on current governments. We have a very, very long friendship between Hungary and Poland, and we build our cooperation on that. What do I expect Poland to play? I think it's obvious that in the Central Eastern European region, Poland is a leading power. And Poland has to live up to this role, and Poland has to do it very wisely, because we are all rebellious people here, the Hungarians for sure, and we don't like to be led. So we will have to be led by a Poland which is very wise and leads in a wise way.
Thank you. So I promised 60 minutes, so we are now 52, so we do have time for, I would say, 2 or 3 quick questions and the answers. So who is in the audience interested to react? So I see the voice, the hand here.
Yes, thank you. Paul Beckers from the Netherlands. A very brief question. The title of the meeting is Improving Dialogue on Defense and Security in Europe. I would consider it a missed opportunity if we didn't have a chance to get a panel's view on improving dialogue with Russia. How would you see that?
So another question. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you for excellent discussion. Very interesting and very clearly pointed out your points of view. But looking at the subject of our next panel, I'd like to ask a very simple question. Do you think that there is a link between those two threats or challenges, the South one and the East, and this link is a current activity, Russia activity in Syria? And by the way, that's information from the few minutes. Russia has stopped every flight to Egypt. Thank you.
Very clear question. And the last one is Cyril Svoboda.
I was just one simple question. So, because you know the President of the European Commission, he's speaking about the European army. So do you believe that something like that is possible one day to form some common force, maybe for fighting the threats we are speaking about?
Okay, so we have 3 clear questions, so I would propose that you would divide how to respond those questions. So is there anybody who is willing to respond to the European army question? Yes, Peter?
A very short answer. One day anything is possible. But I think that's very far away. In order to have a proper European army, you have to have a single European state, at least, you know, something like a United States of Europe. And that is very far away.
Is there a different opinion, somebody, or no? Share the same? Me too. So the next question was about the Russia engagement. Who is willing to respond to the question, you know, how to engage Russia? Romania, Vienna, so Vienna first, Romania second?
I guess it's important to maintain the dialogue with Russia, absolutely. We need the dialogue with Russia, but at the same time we need to be consistent in our dialogue with Russia, and I guess we need to tell them very outspokenly that we cannot accept and will not accept the way they have been behaving so far. And dialogue does not mean that you always have to agree. And it would be a mistake, I guess, if we came to the conclusion that since we don't agree, we don't have dialogue. One has to be very tough with them, speak the truth, say what we cannot accept and what we expect from them to behave and to do in the future. But on this tough basis, we should absolutely continue the dialogue.
Daniel?
Not many things actually to add on that. We need actually to respect our principles, and we need to have a very principled dialogue with Russia, saying them each and every time that we cannot agree with the breaking of the international law. We are a part of the same family, but in this family there are rules, there are regulations, and for the time being, they are on the wrong side of this history.
Péter, something to add to that?
Yes, I do think that it's absolutely clear that we have to have a dialogue with Russia, because Russia is here and it won't go away from here. But what is very important is to have a dialogue from the position of strength. And so we have to be strong in many senses. In military terms, we have to strengthen ourselves. But not only in military terms, in other terms as well, like on the energy field. We have to build alternative energy routes, energy sources, in order to be strong enough and not to rely on Russia. And from the position of strength, you can have a very nice dialogue with anybody.
Johan, to this question, or? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I just to subscribe to what Péter just said, and I can't see really any room to compromise on the break of rules and international laws. So I would very much subscribe to that, from a position of unity, strength. We're always open to discuss with the one who has broken the rules if they behave properly.
And then is the last question about the possible hidden hand of Russia in Syria. So Assad and Putin bombing the country, the exodus of the Sunnis to Europe to destabilize the continent. Are you of that opinion? Some of you, Daniel, you did not say anything yet. So, what is your opinion? Is Russia behind?
I would say also, let's say, coming to the previous question, dialogue. I mean, if it means talking to them and listening to them, yes. But if somebody thinks or means by the word dialogue that we will be becoming kind of allies, no. For a simple reason, they are not interested. Russians right now are interested in to be one of the pole in multipolar world and being able to play a great power concert globally and have freedom of political and military movement globally and be independent. So what's happening in Syria is exactly this. And if we think that it's not in our interest, then we should be doing something else or more than we are doing, but we are not doing this. So they have a space to act. So they are acting according to how they understand the Russian interests. Assad is still, according to international law, legitimate head of the state. He invited them, so from strictly, legally, formally, according to international law, they are legitimately there. And I mean, even if they are acting not totally from how we see the interests or our interests, I mean, still they are acting because we are also allowing them to act. So whether there is a solution without them in Middle East, maybe yes, but right now we are acting the way there is no solution without them. So that's the reality.
Should it be the end of our session, or somebody disagree, or agree? Everybody agree. Okay, thank you very much, Katarzyna. 60 minutes.